Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Jordan Bateman, Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. Welcome back to the show, Jordan.
Thanks for having me, Jim.
I know politics somehow always seems to get in the way of doing good business. You have some concerns about the civic elections where business issues apparently are being totally ignored.
Yeah, well, I thought a lot of issues are being totally ignored in this municipal election cycle. Now, it's early, and some of the higher profile races, I think you're seeing a number of fairly unknown candidates grapple with what's going on. But yeah, not a lot of ideas yet, not a lot of talk about, how to attract investment to various municipalities, how to make sure that there's good jobs close to people's homes, how to encourage small business. It should be concerning to people that, all these folks who want to represent us, or a huge chunk of them, seem to not understand that, municipalities are very important as far as creating an environment where business can thrive and, by extension, where communities thrive.
What needs to be brought up in this election that would help the business community and i.e. job creation?
Well, I would start with looking at red tape. And, we often talk about red taping, and, red tape is kind of like this, catchphrase that gets thrown about. But, municipal governments make it very difficult for their best customers to exist. So let's be clear. Businesses pay between 2 and 6 times more in property taxes than residents do. And in fact, in many of the larger communities, the business sector very much subsidizes municipal services for residents. So having a thriving business sector is very important. But unlike a business where you would treat those customers like gold because they are your best customers, the opposite happens. Municipal halls almost treat businesses like they're a nuisance. And here are these companies that are, spending a fortune subsidizing other people's services, and they're getting treated like dirt. And I'll give you one little example. Let's take annual business licenses, for example. Why do we force businesses who spend, tens of thousands, some of them hundreds of thousands of dollars in property taxes and other municipal fees every year? Why do we force them to get up, send someone down to municipal hall every single year, fill out a bunch of forms, spend, $100 or $200 or $500 and apply for a business license renewal? Why not just give them a 5-year business license or a lifetime business license? Like, you go through it as long as a business is in existence and doing relatively the same work. You don't have to go back and renew it. It's just one of those tiny little nickel and dime items where it's not even the cost of the actual paperwork that bothers people. It's just the fact they have to go and do it, and that they're treated with suspicion every time they do it. Something like that, very simple, would not be a major blow to civic revenues, but would be a real sign that, hey, we want your business here and we're going to make it as easy as possible to get it.
What about the length of time it takes to get a building permit?
That's another great example. So, company X wants to come in and build something, maybe an office or homes or whatever. They have to buy the land and then they have to hold it for often months. In the case of Vancouver, often years, until they get the permit necessary to go ahead and build it. And we're seeing this real overreach now that, you need a permit for everything. Even work that's just internal, that maybe won't affect any other business. Look, we understand there's safety considerations and those things need to be taken into account, but, do you really need a permit in order to install, a half wall somewhere or a new boardroom or something like that? Probably not. But it's, one of those things that gets added to a pile of some poor business inspector or some, permit issuer, and it gets pushed down the priority list, and months go by, and meanwhile companies are dealing with that holding cost, and it just drives up the cost of business, which again makes your community less attractive.
Vancouver's got 43 public relations people. How many people do they have on the building permits desk?
I don't have that number, which is less than 43. That's a perfect example of a municipality that's gone completely out of control. Very much part of that whole Vision Vancouver dogma. Found it highly entertaining now that Ian Campbell has bowed out as Vision Vancouver candidate. Obviously, reading the tea leaves, realizing he was about to go down to a massive defeat. Now that he's gone, now Heather Deal and Andrew Reimer are kicking the tires and running for Vision Vancouver. Jim, let me say this: I would love one of these current councillors to show the courage to go to the electorate and stand on Vision Vancouver's record, because they would quickly realize just how unpopular their decisions have been, how divisive they've been, how arrogant they've been, and they would go down to a crashing defeat. So I, for one, say, Andrew Reimer, please run for mayor of Vancouver, because I want to see Vision Vancouver finally come to terms with just how devastating they've been for many, many parts of Vancouver.
What kind of a government do you think people should be looking to elect if they want to ensure healthy local economies?
Well, here's what I'm looking for. So I live in the township of Langley, and I'm like everyone else. There's some councillors I know personally, and some candidates I know personally, and some I don't. So here's what I look for in their biographies. I look first for a good dose of common sense and for real life experience. I want a council that has some people on it with small business experience, not just people who, to use the old cliche, not just people who sign the back of a check, but people who sign the front of a check, who've employed people, who've tried to set up businesses in the community, who have dealt with the city hall, not just as a property taxpayer or as a recreation facility user, but as a business owner. So that's what I look for first is, okay, which of these people have run a small business? I also, frankly, I delete anyone who has, is an employee of a public sector union. I find it a real conflict of interest that, some councillors, school trustees, mayors, oversee negotiations with CUPE, with the Teachers Federation, and with other groups, with other public sector unions, while being members of maybe another local of it or another chapter of those unions. I find that a conflict of interest, and it's one that I wish that would be addressed. So, I delete those folks as well from my list. And then, the common sense factor, like, does this person seem, reasonable in their positions? Are they, do they actually talk about the importance of business to a healthy community? Do they seem to understand that businesses and residents can't afford, annual tax increases more than the rate of inflation year after year after year after year? Are they committed to stretching a dollar, trying to get best value for that taxpayer dollar? Those are all things I look for in the people I vote for, and hopefully other folks are looking the same way.
Do you find that people in small towns are more business oriented to the small business because they realize how vital it is to their community's health?
Yeah, I think in small towns, people understand a little bit more the entrepreneurial spirit because it is such an important part of the fabric of a town. If you have someone who's starting a small business in a community of 3,000 or 4,000 people, well, that's a big risk, and I think people appreciate the effort it takes to do that. So, yeah, I think generally does. Those small towns often have been reliant as well on, one or two very large taxpayers. You think of the mill towns, you think of Tumbler Ridge, communities like that have had to deal with big employers shutting down over the years and what that's meant to their overall tax base. So as well, I think they realize maybe a little bit more than the average person how big business can often spin off a lot of positive effects for small business.
Do you think business in general might be tainted by what appears to be a fact that big land developers own city councils because they contribute a lot of money to them? So people just throw them all together in one big batch.
Yeah, I think that's probably part of the problem. But look, we're in an election cycle now where businesses and unions aren't allowed to donate money directly to candidates. And frankly, I think we're about to see the lowest municipal turnout in the history of municipal elections in British Columbia. My sense is that the public has no idea that this election's been moved up a month from its normal time. We've now moved to 4-year terms, whereas it wasn't that long ago we had elections every year for half of the council. We're seeing a lack of financial resources for candidates, which means they can't send out a piece of mail. They can't buy the signs they would normally buy. That makes it a lot more difficult to advertise. And, if you're not advertising something, how are people supposed to know what's going on? So I actually think that we're going to see turnout plunge. And I do wonder if that may force a rethink of some of these election rules to try to, loosen them up and make sure there's at least enough money in the limits and in the way that donations are structured to help people. I'll give you a quick example. So, in the township of Langley, where I live, there's about 115,000 people, probably about 40,000-ish households. Under the spending limit set out by the government, you would not be able to send a piece of mail to every person on the voters list because it would be too expensive. You would go over the limit. So, if you can't even mail folks, let them know you're running, that's a big hurdle to trying to get them out to vote.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after the break.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
I'm Kelly Jennings, CEO of Powerband Solutions. Powerband is a cloud-based provider of auction, inventory, and finance solutions that make buying, selling, and financing vehicles more efficient. Powerband Solutions trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol PBX and on the OTCQB symbol PWWPF and on Frankfurt symbol 1ZV. For more information, please visit us at powerbandsolutions.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, do members of your association have concerns about the BC government speculation tax?
Yeah, we're hearing a lot from our members, especially in the West Kelowna area and in and around Victoria. That seems to be the pointy edge of the spear here. Here's the problem. We have this tax that the NDP like to call a speculation tax, but which is actually called a second home tax. And it taxing British Columbians and other Canadians for owning a second home or second piece of property other than their primary residence. And I think something like 2/3 of the people who are going to be taxed under this are BC residents, and now they're going to be forced to pay this tax. And you have the mayors coming out and saying, please don't do this, or if you're going to do it, at least give the municipalities the ability to opt out of it. Because you're having a negative effect. I thought Stu Young made a very compelling case, the mayor of Langford. He's at the Union of BC Municipalities Conference. He made a very strong case saying, look, you can't tax your way to more housing supply. You can't tax your way to housing affordability. And yet that's precisely what the NDP are trying to do. So, yeah, I'm curious where this legislation will go in the fall. Andrew Weaver, who voted for the speculation tax at budget time, now says, he's got a number of amendments that he wants to see if he can get through to change it. Better late than never to common sense, I suppose. But I wish Andrew had been a little bit more forceful at budget time, pushing back on this issue.
What's the big problem with the speculation tax?
Well, look, in resort communities, some of these projects are by definition, second homes. So, in the Okanagan, there's a number of Albertans and other British Columbians, thousands of British Columbians who own a second piece of property there. And they may spend, 3 months a year there, they may spend 6 months a year there, but it's not their primary residence. And what happens is, because you have these defined zones where the speculation tax occurs, so for West Kelowna, for example, if I was looking to build a big project, I would just go down the highway slightly to Peachland, which is outside the speculation tax zone. Forget my West Kelowna project. I'll go to Peachland and build a project there because I have access to those customers that won't pay the extra speculation tax in West Kelowna. So we are seeing developments being canceled in some of these communities, West Kelowna and Nanaimo most notably. And we have mayors saying, "Look, great, you're doing this. speculation tax, but none of that money actually helps make housing more affordable in any way.
Was the idea that people would be forced to sell these homes and so they'd be available for people to live in? However, on the other hand, if they're cabins or cottages, they're usually in places that you wouldn't want to spend a winter in.
Well, precisely. So, if you have a little cabin on or near a lake in the Okanagan, fantastic, but, it's usually remote and usually the roads aren't great to get there. And so, you can't spend 12 months a year there. So I think the idea was maybe to force people to rent out those properties, but, would only have a rental market during peak times. And again, that doesn't really solve the problem because for 3 to 6 months a year, someone wants to live there, the owner. It's typical NDP social engineering where they think everyone should have exactly the same thing and they don't really care about people's hard work or efforts to try and, gain assets. They want to strip them from them and hand them out to other people. The shocking thing to me is and I think where the NDP have been a little bit more sensitive from criticism is, I know a number of teachers, for example, about to retire or recently retired who own, vacation properties all throughout the province. And, these teachers are not, they're teachers. They're not wealthy. They're not 1%ers that we should be taxing. They're not speculators we should be hammering. They're teachers who scrimped and saved and bought it at a good time and have a little cabin somewhere and, use it and their kids use it and their grandkids use it. Why are we punishing these people? Why are we trying to force them to sell that little family cottage to, just to satisfy, people in Vancouver who are howling about unaffordable homes? It's really a shame. And I wish, Carol James would have given the mayors a little bit more, understanding and would have actually listened to their concerns.
What does the Contractors Association could be done to make housing more affordable?
Well, more supply. So, we're definite supplies. Look, we're not saying that there isn't, foreign investment and there aren't things like that need to be addressed and taken a look at. But we are first and foremost, we believe in economic principles, and supply and demand dictates that, if you add more supply to something, prices go down. We've seen it in Seattle. They built and sped up permits for rental properties. They had a 1.5% rental vacancy rate, 5 or 6 years ago. Now they're much higher. Landlords are actually giving away, $500 IKEA cards to people to sign up and rent a place so that they can go and help furnish it. Like the rental market is flipped on its ear, and it's all because of supply. So hey, you want to bring down housing prices? Speed up permitting, speed up zoning, quit, buckling to every single NIMBY who walks through the door of a public hearing. Let the industry build these homes for people, and you'll see prices stabilize. You'll see rental prices go down because there'll be a lot more supply for everyone.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after this.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead-zinc-silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineer gold mine in the Atlan District of Northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, Ontario Premier Doug Ford touched off a Firestone when he used when he used the notwithstanding clause to reduce the size of Toronto City Council. Now, I'm sure you're thinking that's a pretty minor issue, but there could have been another use of it. And what did you have in mind?
Well, the notwithstanding clause is kind of the get-out-of-jail-free card for government. So if there's a court decision that happens that the government doesn't like, often they have the option, they could use this notwithstanding clause and essentially bring in legislation and override the courts. This comes to mind when you think of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. You wonder if there was a way that, or still a way the Trudeau government could override the flawed, what I think is a flawed Court of Appeal decision that paused this thing. I think it's only politics that they don't use the notwithstanding clause. It's one of the things where, for Doug Ford, using it again will be made much easier once he survives his first use of it. I do wonder if you'll see more premiers going back to what used to happen in the 80s and 90s quite a bit, and using that clause to make sure things go forward. Let's not forget. Look, politicians are elected. Judges are not. Politicians can be held to account. 3-4 years after they make a decision, you can vote the bums out. We can't do that with judges. That's why we try to make sure the laws are being made by politicians who we can hold accountable, rather than judges who, don't have that same accountability to the people. That's when government works best, is when there's that direct link of accountability. I, for one, would like to see courts doing less legislating through their decisions, and instead hold the politicians to account for those decisions.
Jordan, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
My guest has been Jordan Bateman, Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. Their website, icba.ca. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. If you have any questions for the show or our guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.